We're now live, thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. So good afternoon and welcome to the decision days of myself, Kirsty North. I'm the Executive Lead Member for Universal Services, as well as Lulu Bauman, the Executive Member for Highways and Waste. This decision day is being broadcast in one session live on YouTube via the County Council website. I would like to welcome Councillor Rob McCatter, our Select Committee Chairman, and Councillor Malcolm Wallace, who is attending as Deputy from the Independent Group. So welcome to you both, thank you for being here. And we don't have any deputations today, so we can head on to our first item on the agenda, which is the project appraisal for the Schola recladding at Hamble School, Warblington School and Butts Primary School. And I think, Patrick, you're going to introduce.
Thank you, Councillor North. Good afternoon, everybody. As you said, this is a project appraisal for 3 schools, which you mentioned. That's Hamble School, Warblington School and Butts Primary School. And the paper really sets out a lot of detail, but it's about significantly improving the thermal performance of the school and the quality of the teaching spaces. As well as that, it'll be looking to reduce running costs as part of that, funded from the school condition allocation, but also an element of Section 106 funding. And we're looking to start the works which are planned over this summer. So just a very brief introduction to the paper, but that was all I was going to say by way of introduction. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Patrick. I don't have any questions on this one, but I'd just like to offer our other councillors in attendance the opportunity to ask any questions that they may have. Councillor Wallace.
Super. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, these projects look like a no-brainer. It's exciting to see improvements being made to our schools. Not only the thermal efficiency, but also the potential addition of more solar. So it's great to see. I just had 3 hopefully pretty straightforward questions. What energy standards are the buildings currently, and what will they be once the work is completed? What is the overall plan for school improvements, and how was this reviewed? Well, that might be because I'm new to this. You might well have reviewed this beforehand. And the third one was, does the council review embedded carbon as well as the ongoing carbon impact? Thank you.
Councillor, happy for me to take those questions?
Yeah, thanks, Patrick.
Thank you, Councillor, and many thanks for your questions, Councillor Wallace. What I may do is bring my colleague Mike Bridgman, one of my assistant directors with responsibility for property, in to cover some of the details. But in terms of the energy standards, before I move that, I'll just go on to the overall plan for improvement. We have an overall plan for the condition of the schools. We have limited funding, which, you know, we're always quite successful in the school condition allocation funding, and we work very hard with government on that. In fact, we've been part of some of the Public Accounts Committee's representations, part of that, and I think recently there's a call also for further evidence coming from government for that, which we'll input into. Let me just hand over to Mike Bridgman, who can pick up the energy standards and maybe give a bit more detail on the improvement programme, but also maybe picking up the question on the embedded carbon. But it may be, Councillor Wallace, that we may need to come back to you with some specific details on numbers if they aren't captured in the report. Thank you. Mike?
Thanks, Patrick. Thanks, Councillor Wallace. So, yeah, we will need to come back to you on to give a precise answer on the energy standards for the kind of schools in question. In terms of all the overall plan, Councillor Wallace, just to build on what Patrick said there, we have just over 400 schools, varying from being quite old to ones that we've opened a kind of year or 2 ago. So the condition will vary significantly. We have a 5-year programme to inspect all our buildings, and that helps us inform and prioritise how we spend our school conditions allocation. So we have a kind of sum from government that goes towards that. Patrick did mention there was some Section 106 here, which is correct, but the majority of this funding, and we go on to the next report as well, is from that school's condition allocation. So that regular review helps us prioritise which buildings to do when. This is part of a regular programme. We've had these reports before, we'll have these reports again, and all the benefits we've said about reduced carbon, better climate resilience, ongoing revenue savings, and essentially a better school for the staff to teach and the children to learn in. We do look at embedded carbon as well, Councillor Wallace, in terms of the kind of broader aspects. We try to maximise those climate benefits of all the work that we do. So that's both in terms of the mitigation, the decarb work, and the adaptation to make sure the buildings are resilient as we can.
Thanks, Mike. Happy, Councillor Wallace?
Yep. So let me just say that so the overall plan. So we've got kind of priority order for the schools, and then we get funding from the government, and we work through the schools in the priority that we've identified. Is that kind of where we're at?
Correct. We have a regular, consistent funding, pretty consistent every year. The school conditioned allocation, just over £20 million that goes to the entire estate of 400 schools. We do a regular survey every 5 years of the conditions of the schools, and we prioritise which ones to pick. Given that amount of money and that number of schools, that's why we'll do them in batches and the highest priority ones.
Yeah, all makes sense. The embedded carbon, maybe we could have a bit more of a discussion about that offline, I think, maybe.
Of course.
Brilliant. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you for your questions. Don't know if Councillor Bowman would like to make a comment on this one. And I've 2 minutes up to you.
Thank you, Councillor North. Just to say, I think this item and the next item are very positive news for schools, and I'm very pleased to see them coming forward, particularly in this item because Warblington School is receiving recladding, and that is in my division, so it's very personal to me. So thank you very much.
Very good. Well, thank you for your comments. I wholeheartedly agree. It's great news to see investment in Hamble School, Warblington School and Butts Primary School to improve their energy efficiency, which will be of benefit to not only current pupils but future pupils will benefit, as well as the school's budgets as they try and manage their heating costs. So I'm very happy to approve the recommendations which are on pages 5 and 6 of the agenda. And we can move on to item number 2, which is re-roofing and thermal improvement programme. Back to Patrick briefly, I think.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor North. So you're right to say re-roofing and thermal improvement programme. This report covers 6 schools where we're looking to do that work, the improvement. All of them suffer from cold in the winter, but also importantly, as we're seeing now, also overheating in the summer as well as part of that. So it actually helps address those problems. Again, we will see a reduction in running costs as a result of this work, which is always welcome. And again, funded from the school condition allocation, which I know Mike has talked about in some detail on the last report. We're looking to start this work over the summer. As previous, it always works doing the work over the summer when the schools are quieter, when the pupils are off on leave. But again, pointing out in this report also where there's PV installed on a number of these buildings, we'll be looking to take the photovoltaic panels off and reinstall them back on, improving them where we can as part of that. So that was all I was going to say by way of introduction. Again, happy to take questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. I'll ask our councillor colleagues, Councillor Wallace or Councillor McCatter, if they have any questions. Councillor Wallace. Just muted, sorry.
Thank you. Okay.
This
one, I'm sure this one will be an easy one. Again, it's great to see this happening. It's really good news. I just wanted to ask if there's a simple explanation why we're only doing the roof of these rather than the whole building. Thank you.
Mike, you have to take the question, please.
Yes, so it builds on the answer from the kind of previous report, really, Councillor Wallace. So everything we're kind of doing the kind of surveys on kind of 5-year cyclical basis. We see where the issues are, and we see how we maximise that spend of the school condition allocations priority areas. Doing the entire school would clearly be far greater cost. We therefore get around less schools. So whilst it'd be desirable to do a kind of much bigger job on multiple schools, we have to operate within the financial limit we have and prioritise based on the condition of each individual school.
Thanks, Mike. I thought that'd be the answer. That's great. Thank you.
Over to Councillor McCatter.
Yeah, thanks, Kirsty. My only question, Mike, is about follow-up. As we're spending between £500,000 and £750,000 per school, it'd be very useful after it's done to give us some sort of data in a year's time or 18 months' time about what it actually saved us. So we can just have that evidence about we spent this money and here's the evidence a year or 18 months later. So if we can just put that in the programme to tell us about it in due course, I think that'd be very useful.
We can absolutely do that, Councillor McCatter. I assume you're talking there about some of the energy performance. So that's really straightforward to kind of capture all that. There's the wider benefits around pupil attainment, the environment for the teachers. So there's a whole range of benefits. We can talk about the revenue savings as well. But on the assumption it's particularly around the energy performance, that is straightforward and we can capture that.
It's exactly that. I'm very aware that my local secondary school in Peaceville, TPS, has solar panels on the roof, and they've got a fantastic display as you go into the school, showing the children and all the teachers and everyone visited how much they're saving from the solar panels. And I think it's a really good way of engaging, particularly that the children going to the school with the whole process. So the more we can do about that, I think it's a really worthwhile spend for us trying to make that information as public as possible.
We'll do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Really valid point there. Councillor Bowerman, I know you referenced this item as well, just to give you the opportunity.
No, thank you, Councillor North. All happy.
Fantastic. Well, as we've heard, this is really great news story for the pupils of the schools listed, and it's going to make a real difference to them and their budgets. So again, really happy to approve the recommendations, which this time are on pages 19 and 20 of the report. In which case we can move to the Botley bypass, which is the award of the construction contract, and back to Patrick.
Thank you very much, Councillor North. So this report really is a long-standing commitment from the County Council, and as you rightly say, it's seeking agreement to enter into the contractual arrangements with Milestone Infrastructure for the final phase of the Botley bypass. Now, technically, it's been quite a complex project, but we've got full funding in place and all agreed. The strategic case remains strong, and it's a key piece of infrastructure for the local area. I think you'll see within the report there's been a lot of engagement locally as part of this. There's very strong support across the member community, and actually what we have in place is a detailed comms plan subject to the decision today, which will make sure that we continue to engage the community and local members as we go through the construction of that. You'll see within the report also there's some detailed images which are quite helpful to show what the actual road will look like in terms of its sort of look and feel. And I think there's a fly-through image which will be planned as part of the communications. And subject to the decision, what we'll be looking to do is start the works next month with some clearance, and then the main work starting in May of this year. But that was all I was going to say by way of introduction. I'm joined on the call by Tim Lawton, my Assistant Director for this area. We'd be happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Patrick. As you say, this has been a long-standing item on which we're very familiar with now. But Councillor Wallace, Councillor McCatter, any questions? Wallace?
Of course, I've got questions. Right. When this came to full council a few months back, I asked the question what proportion of the Botley bypass cost increase was due to technical issues and how much due to delays in implementing the scheme. I know the leader took the action to come back to me on that, and I'm not sure I ever saw an answer. So I'm not expecting you to answer it today, but perhaps somebody could get me an answer on that, and that would be quite helpful. Thank you. A couple of other points. I know a lot of people, my division covers right up to where the Botley bypass is going to join at Pinkmead. And there is a lot of residents in that area are looking forward to having the bypass in place because it will reduce the traffic, hopefully reduce the traffic on some of the roads that it's happening at the moment. But right now there is a lot of traffic using very small rural roads, particularly HGVs, and I have exchanged. The project leader has actually sent me some really good information, which I've shared with the residents about how traffic is being managed, both now and the plan, or the developing plan for managing it during the works. But I just wanted to raise that again. It is a real problem for residents right now, the traffic and the HGV. So I've got some good answers back from the project team, but we need to keep it at the top of our list of concerns as the development happens. I guess the last bit was it's good to see the carbon mitigation actions that are being implemented around the scheme. I just wondered, has the impact been quantified? We've got a lot of good ideas that are shown there I think it's in paragraph 41, but have we actually put any values against any of these? Do we understand how much of a difference implementing these actions is going to make on the overall carbon impact of the project? Thank you.
Councillor North, are you happy for me to respond to those?
Yeah.
I might bring Tim in a minute for those as well. Many thanks for your questions, Councillor Wallace. Apologies if we didn't get back to you with the costings from your question for Council. We will absolutely make sure we get you some answers to those questions in terms of the increases, but also the likes of any sort of technical challenges we've had, but also the likes of inflation, I think, which you referenced there. I think your second point, really helpful to see that the project leads have come back to you with details on things like traffic management, how we're doing it currently, what the plans are for that. And just to reassure you, that will continue throughout the course of the programme. We will always make sure we keep the local residents informed, the local communities informed with how any disruption will be managed. As you know from the member portal, you'll be able to find some of this information online, but also residents can find it online as well through some of the areas we have. But we'll make sure that communication is going out to communities so they see where that disruption may take place and the alternative routes. But we'll work very hard to that and indeed listen to feedback where it's not working. So we'll make sure we pick that up. In terms of the mitigation for carbon, I'm going to hand over to Tim, who might be able to just elaborate on some of the traffic stuff, but also give us a question or an answer on that one, because I know that Milestone Infrastructure are very hot on looking at the impact and the carbon impact for the schemes that they deliver. So I might just get Tim to give us a bit more detail around that, if I may. Tim, you have to pick that up, please.
Yeah, of course, Patrick. Yeah, Councillor Wallace, I don't know what Ben has shared with you, but the traffic management plan, it will evolve as the scheme progresses. As you know, most of the scheme is offline, away from the live carriageway. But when they build the roundabout at the eastern end, that will inevitably cause some disruption. There is an early traffic management plan in place for that, which we've worked up in conjunction with the contractor, Milestone, but that is something that will be live as we're doing that element of the work. We will closely monitor the impact it's having, and if we need to make changes during the construction period, then we will. In terms of the carbon savings, I'm assuming you mean in terms of tons of CO2 saved, or do you mean in terms of value, i.e. cost?
I guess both.
Okay, I thought you might say that. So the value answer is probably one I'd need to sort of pick up with you offline, because it's embedded within the target cost price that we've got from the contractor. So there will be some commercial sensitivity around that, but happy to share that with you separately. In terms of quantifying the CO2 saved, absolutely, we can put a value on that. It's not included in the report, but it does exist. So again, we can share that with you separately.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Bowman, would you like the opportunity to comment?
Yes, thank you very much, Councillor North. I mean, I welcome these proposals for the Botley bypass. I think it's much needed in this particular area. So very pleased to see it coming through. And also, I feel reassured now that Tim has given us some details about the traffic management plan and that it will be live. So it's it's a living document, if you like, and will also be carefully monitored as the scheme progresses. So I think it will allow for adaptations and changes where needed. So I'm very happy for this to go ahead. Thank you.
Did you want to come back on that, Tim? Sorry, I just spotted your hand.
Yeah, sorry, Councillor North. Yeah, I just wanted to add to my previous answer, and it kind of links with what Patrick had already shared, that as part of that sort of live monitoring of the traffic, we will, as Patrick has said, maintain close engagement with the local community, so the 3 or 4 parish councils that are impacted by the works. So they will very much be, part of the delivery plan and or the engagement element of the delivery plan. So they will be kept abreast of any changes in traffic which might impact Botley or Whiteley, Curdridge, Hedge End, etc.
Thank you, Tim. That's really important to add. And I know there's been a lot of engagement with the local residents and councils and councillors already, and it's really important that we continue that dialogue and that they feel it just involved in this as they have done to date. So thank you. I'm really happy to approve the spend and enable the council to enter into the contractual arrangements to implement this final phase of the Botley bypass. As we've already said, it's going to improve local journeys and provide much needed additional road capacity in this part of Hampshire. So it's really good news. The recommendations are on page 33, so I approve those. And then we can move on to item number 4, which is the annual review of the policy for the regulation of Investigatory Powers Act 2000. And Patrick, briefly, I'm sure.
Indeed. Thank you, Councillor. So this is a paper we bring every year, which is a formality really to make sure that we publish the policy that we do in relation to the covert investigatory techniques, which we do in line with codes of practice from the Home Office and the Act itself, which you'll see within the paper. Just a couple of points to note: we use the powers very sparingly, and the decisions we make with this are very, very carefully considered. And we need to make applications to the court before we actually use these powers. But we have no instances of use of those powers in 23-24 for direct covert surveillance. We also take a report along these lines to the Audit Committee for complete clarity and transparency. And you'll see also just briefly in the report in paragraphs 18 to 19 that we're also monitored by the Investigatory Powers Commissioner's Office. And in fact, we've had some very good feedback with them in how we use these powers that we have and how we make sure we report on that. But that was all I was going to say by way of introduction. I'd say I'm very happy to take questions where I can on the detail. I've also got my colleague James Potter with me, who may be able to pick up even more detail should we need it, but very happy to take those. Thank you, Councillor North.
Thank you, Patrick. And no, I've been briefed on this already, so I don't personally have any questions, but Councillor Wallace, Councillor McAtter, any questions on this one? No, fantastic. I'll offer Councillor Bowman the chance to speak.
Nothing from me, thank you, Councillor North.
Fantastic, in which case I'm happy to approve the recommendation on page 49 for that one. And then we can move to the exclusion of the press and the public. And I have determined that the public be excluded from the decision day during the following item of business, as it is likely, in view of the nature of the business to be transacted or the nature of the proceedings, that if members of the public were present during this item, there would be disclosure to them of exempt information within paragraph 3 of part 1 of Schedule 12A to the Local Government Act 1972. And further, that in all the circumstances of the case, the public interest in maintaining the exemptions outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information for the reasons set out in the report. In which case, could I please ask for the webcast to be stopped?
working correct for the webcast. There won't be a moment.
No problem. We will hang on.
Thank you. Lovely. Thank you. We're live again.
Thank you very much. And that brings my part of the decision day to a close. And I'm very pleased to hand over to Councillor Bowman.
Thank you, Councillor North. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm the Executive Member for Highways and Waste, and thank you for attending my section of the virtual decision day today, which continues to be webcast on YouTube via the County Council's website. I have no public deputations today, so we'll move to the first item. And if I can ask Patrick to take this one on, please, if I may, the lane rentals. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bowden. Good afternoon. So this paper relates to the highways disruption charging, or lane rental, which is what the government really calls it. It's a scheme that we're looking to put in place. And a really important part of the scheme is to reduce delays, which is on our busiest roads where there's work taking place for that. And it will do that through a charge of a daily fee for the time that the works are taking place, which will help both finish the work on time, but really incentivise keeping the disruption to a minimum as part of that space. I think you'll see within the report there's a reasonable amount of detail about what happens with that money and the proposal for that money. So it goes into a pot and then we can draw down from that money. And quite late in the day, at the end of the last year, government gave a bit more detail around some consultation work they were doing about how that money would be used. But largely it's about investing that money back into the network. But we could also use some of that money for road maintenance and repair and maintenance of the road. So it's a really welcome injection of money. But actually, principally, the scheme is about changing behaviours and making sure we really incentivise those working on the highway, particularly the utilities companies, to finish on time and minimise that disruption. Again, within the report, there's detailed proposals which we're looking to present the detail of which later this year, and subject to the formal approvals here, we're looking to have the scheme operational by spring 2026. But I'm joined with my colleague Tim Lawton as before, and we'd be both happy to take any questions on the scheme. Thank you, Councillor Bowman.
Thank you very much, Patrick. Do we have any questions from Councillor Wallace or Councillor McAtter? Or comments?
Can I ask one quick question, which I should have asked beforehand, and it's on paragraph 22 about the traffic sensitive streets. And I was thinking about this, particularly in terms of some of our town centres, that they're not currently traffic sensitive streets, they're not on the plan, but whether there's a benefit of actually putting them on the plan rather than potentially not being able to charge for them. So I'm just a little bit curious about how wide we can make the review that's discussed in paragraph 22.
Okay, could I, Councillor Bowman, if I could take that to start with, I might hand over to Tim for more detail. To an extent, Councillor McAtter, we are restricted by the amount of roads, the percentage of roads we can use as part of this scheme. We can't apply a blanket application for this across all of our roads. So we have to be very selective, and we've been doing that through looking at our busiest roads and the ones where we're seeing the most disruption. But Tim, could you just give us a bit more detail around that specific question?
Yeah, I think you've answered it, Patrick, in that it is a requirement that any road that forms part of the disruption charging network has to be traffic sensitive, and if it isn't, then we need to make it so. But that doesn't change the processes that are in place for managing the rest of the traffic sensitive network. So if something changes and we need to review whether a road should be traffic sensitive or not, we can still do that. But as Patrick said, we are limited by the percentage of the network that we can put forward for lane rental, and the DFT have indicated that it should be, their words, around 10%, and you'll see that we've already gone slightly beyond that, but we feel that there's a strong business case for taking it beyond the 10%. Whether that will be agreed by the DFT remains to be seen, and we'll need to wait until we formally make a submission for the powers later this year.
Thanks, Tim. Can I just confirm it's not a statutory 10%, it's a guidance 10%, isn't it? So we actually, if we try and push that number up, there's no statutory limit to it.
That's correct. Yeah, it's DFT guidance, but from what we know, because some of our neighbouring authorities have already got the powers in place, the DFT are very much focused on keeping it to circa 10%. But we intend to put forward as strong a case as possible take it beyond that. But I think we're probably, near the ceiling as to, where we could get. 13% is probably stretching it a bit far, but we intend to try.
Thank you. I was only making the point that I think there's a huge popular support for this, and pushing that number up a little bit, I think, is a very popular move rather than bring it down to 10%. So that's the point I was just trying to make. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McCaskett. Councillor Wallace, would you like to come in?
Yeah, I got 3 questions. Other areas of country have already implemented this scheme. Have we learnt? There's always opportunity for doing things better. Have we managed to got any feedback from those areas about opportunities, about what went wrong, how we could do things better? In other words, have we taken account the lessons learned from those schemes? Second question is, does the scheme cover both planned and emergency maintenance? And simple one. And then finally, paragraph 19 says that we retain, or says that there's likely that we're going to retain 50% of the surplus funding. Where does the other 50% go? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
thank you. So I'll hand over to Tim, if I may, Councillor Bowman, who can pick up.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Patrick. Councillor Wallace, good questions. First question, absolutely, we are learning lessons from those authorities that have already been through this process. West Sussex and Surrey have already got lane rental schemes in place, and we are using the same consultant that they've used. And so I would say our scheme has got a good chance of being, pretty well defined and refined by the time we secure the powers from DfT. So yes, and it's not just those two. There are other authorities as well that we've sought feedback from. Your second question was, does it include planned maintenance and emergencies? It absolutely includes planned maintenance. I would need to come back to you on whether it includes emergencies. I think emergencies are accepted on the basis that if you've got a gas leak, you need to go in and deal with it quickly. But I think where we will need to apply some strong governance is to make sure if something is declared as an emergency, it genuinely is an emergency. But I will come back to you on that detailed point. Sorry, what was your third question?
It's about the money that we're going to raise from this.
Yes.
It's great that we're, got an opportunity for using some funding that's raised from the scheme towards roads. We all know we need to put more into that. But paragraph 19 implied that we're only getting 50% of the surplus funding. So I was wondering where the other 50% was going.
Right. Okay. So up until the announcement in December, all of the income from lane rental, excluding the operating cost, which we're allowed to keep, went into a pot, and then everybody that contributes to the Hampshire scheme is then able to bid for funds from that pot and use it to deliver congestion busting projects. So it could be a new piece of software that helps to manage the traffic in a better way, or something like that. But the change in December, the change in the government's position in December said that rather than 100% of the surplus funds going into that pot for everyone to bid for, their government's words, at least 50% will now come directly to the local highway authority for highway maintenance. So we don't need to bid for that, it just comes to us. The residual 50% still goes into that pot, which can be bid for by all contributors.
Got it.
I should add that is subject to secondary legislation, which the government is seeking to secure later this year, in the summer.
Thank you. It's good to hear that it's all staying locally. Thank you.
Brilliant. Well, thank you both very much. Any further comment? Councillor North. Oh.
Thank you. I forgot I muted myself. Thank you, Councillor Bowman. I'd just say I'm really, really pleased to see this disruption charge coming forward. Going to reduce delays on our busiest roads and minimise disruption. And as you know, we've just heard, it works well in other parts of the country, and we must do all we can to boost road maintenance and our road maintenance funds, and this will be an important tool in our kit to deliver that. So really, really pleased.
Thank you very much. I'd just like to add an additional section before I make my final closing comments, if I may. And Tim, you have prompted me, so thank you very much. In considering this decision today, I note that the position has changed since paragraph 9 of the decision report was drafted. Paragraph 9 states that the surplus funds can also be used for schemes, projects and research aimed at reducing traffic congestion, i.e. the surplus should not be used for repairing potholes caused by general wear and tear or, for example, bad weather. This is now incorrect, as the government will be seeking a change to secondary legislation, which is what Tim was just saying, later this year, that will enable up to 50% of funding received from disruption charging to be retained specifically for highways maintenance purposes, which could include repairing potholes, which is music to my ears, of course, and Councillor North's. This change is expected to be in place by the time the County Council secures the necessary powers in 2026. So just to formalise, Tim, what you just said. And I'm really pleased to give the green light to the development of these proposals that will give a financial incentive to those needing to carrying out roadworks on our busier parts of Hampshire highways network, and I'm sure it will create more efficient operations outside of peak hours, for example, and hopefully for shorter periods wherever possible. And like Councillor McCatter said, I'm sure residents across the county will welcome this proposal for many reasons. I think we've all sat in traffic jams and looked a little frustrated, to say the least. So I am delighted to to give the green light to this and to approve it. Thank you very much. Tim, would you like to come in?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Bowman. I just wanted to address the second question from Councillor Wallace. I found the answer, which may be of interest to everybody else. So it was in respect of our emergencies excluded, and I just wanted to read out a very short paragraph from the government guidance, and it says that in respect of genuine emergency works that must be carried out during the charging period in order to avoid significant danger to public safety or significant damage to property, schemes will be expected to provide a charge-free period to enable the immediate emergency to be dealt with and the road reopened to traffic as quickly as possible. So that suggests to me that to deal with the initial emergency, it's charge-free, but if it then results in some planned work in order to do a permanent reinstatement or something, then that could possibly be liable to a daily charge.
Thank you, Tim. I'm sure that was very helpful. Councillor Wallace, does that answer your question?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
I could see potential for some disagreement on what's emergency and what's planned. Good luck.
Thank you. Okay, so I think without further ado, I'm happy to approve the recommendations on pages 2 to 3, paragraphs 2 to 3 and on page 79. And can we now, Caroline, please end the webcast, and thank you all very much for attending.